think we're going live. Let's just make sure this is actually working.
It says live.
It's live. Are we live?
Woo!
All right. I'm so fucking excited. Let me just, yes, we're here. Oh my God, this is so cool. I love this tool, like the ability to live stream into Facebook from Zoom. Fucking awesome. You guys, this is Shannon Wooten. What is up? We are here. Shannon, say hi.
Hello, everybody.
I am so fucking excited. Guys, we are here for day 2 of 12 Days of Bizmas, and yesterday blew my fucking mind. It was amazing seeing all of you guys jumping on, and now we're here with Shannon Wooten to rock out day 2 of 12 Days of Bizmas. I would love to know from you guys. Drop a comment in the comments about how you're feeling today. Shannon, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling amazing and really lit up and super freaking excited to be here.
Oh my God, it's going to be amazing. So if you guys don't know Shannon, I'm just going to introduce her to all of you. She's a mindset coach. She's a visionary. She's a fucking creative rock star. And she teaches people how to shift into abundance in their business and shift into a layer of intimacy that is so transformative for not just your business, but your life. And so she's going to be jumping on today to talk to us about how to forgive yourself for personal and financial freedom. And me personally, I am so fucking excited about this topic. I feel like when you pitched it to me, Shannon, you're like, I'm going to talk about this. I was like, oh my God, yes. Because it's something like literally, I was like, yes. Because it's something that's not talked about. And I think it's so powerful and I can relate to it on so many levels. So I'm going to throw the floor to you. We have 60 fucking people on this live right now.
I can't see if there's questions or anything coming through. Can you see it?
I can't in here. You're not going to see them on Zoom, but if you jump into the Facebook group specifically, you can probably look through the comments through that Facebook Live. But we'll answer questions at the end. I'm going to be taking some notes while Shannon's talking, and then I'm going to throw her into a Q&A session. So for now, Shannon, you take the floor, and guys, take some notes because I know this is going to be fucking amazing. Take it away, girl.
Woo! Hi, everybody. So excited to be here today. I love this topic. There are a few topics that I really love to talk about as a coach. Specifically, yes, I'm a mindset coach, but I am a life coach as well. And one of my most favorite topics to talk about is forgiveness. For those that don't know me, as Lauren said, my name is Shannon Wooten. I am a life coach. I am a writer, and I'm also an infertility survivor. And so forgiveness plays a huge part in my journey to becoming a life coach and also overcoming the struggles that I faced with infertility. So it helped me realizing that forgiveness is a responsibility. It helped me in realizing that forgiveness is a responsibility not just for my personal self, but for my professional self. Because as Lauren was explaining yesterday in her amazing training, her amazing live, shout out, give all the heart emojis for Lauren's training yesterday. It was fucking badass. But if you have issues or patterns or things that you're facing in your life that exist up here, this does not just exist for your personal life. It impacts your professional life. And I know you guys know that, but sometimes we forget. We forget that forgiveness is a responsibility that we have to ourselves. And oftentimes we look at forgiveness as being something that people need to give to us. We look at it as being something that we need to be deserving of receiving. I want you to flip that on its head. I want you to flip that idea on its head that is something that someone needs to give to you and something that you need to take ownership of for yourself. So I want to explain today why forgiveness is a responsibility. It's not something you can grant to other people. Because if you say to someone, I forgive you, and they come back around and they're still coming up with emotions about that particular thing, they obviously have not received it. They have not accepted it. You cannot make them receive it or want to accept it. They have to take that responsibility for themselves. Conversely, it's not something that other people can grant to you. Think about when you've been forgiven, but you didn't believe it. You're like, are you sure? Are you sure? And then like 2 weeks later, you're like, I know that you said that you were fine with this, but I'm still feeling like aftershocks. I'm still feeling that you might still be mad. And the person's like, I'm not. It's fine. I told you. You're forgiven. All is forgiven. That happens because you haven't taken responsibility for it. You haven't allowed yourself to receive it. When we withhold forgiveness or our ability to receive it, it happens when we victimize ourselves. It happens when we do not accept our part in being angry, holding on to things, fear, or criticizing ourselves or others. It happens when we decide, yes, we'd rather hold on to it than move on. That's why forgiveness is the act of getting complete with ourselves, getting complete with others, getting complete with our patterns of behaviors, our patterns of thinking, our state of being. It takes responsibility for our part in something that we need to forgive ourselves for. It's taking responsibility for how something made us feel and making peace with it. It's taking responsibility for whether or not we actually want to forgive and move on. Forgiveness is the art of compassion, the art of vulnerability, the art of strength, the art of responsibility. All of those things, compassion, vulnerability, strength, they're responsibility. It's the art of spaciousness, clarity, spaciousness for newness, creativity, and growth. So, what happens if we don't take responsibility? What if we feel like we don't know how to move on? What if we refuse to see the gift in the experience, what it has given to us, to enlighten us, to empower us, to grow us? Well, I'm going to ask you, those of you watching, those of you tuning in now, those of you that even posted questions last night on Lauren's post about certain areas of your life that you're struggling with forgiveness or letting go of something that has become a pattern or something that holds you back. I'm going to ask you to consider something, and I preface this with something that's going to make you uncomfortable. It's the same thing I ask myself when I feel stuck. It's the very same thing I asked myself when I was in the heart of struggling with infertility and I felt like I could not overcome it. I felt like it defined me. I felt like I was it. It was my repetitious pattern of seeing myself that way. It's the same thing I ask my clients when they feel stuck. I want you to ask yourself, what are you getting out of it? What are you getting out of withholding forgiveness to yourself? What are you getting out of being mad or harboring resentment? What are you getting out of not getting complete with where you are, with what's holding you back, with this pattern, with this story, with how you're seeing yourself, with how you're seeing your life, with what's going on up here? So you may hear that. What am I getting out of it? What am I getting out of it? What the hell? And you may be thinking, why would I hold on to something that makes me feel frustrated or mad or like I'm holding myself back? Who the hell would do that? I mean, I don't know. That's up to you. It's up to me to figure out for me because it's my responsibility. It's up for you to figure out for you because it's your responsibility. Maybe you hold on to things because it justifies how your life is going right now. Maybe it's because right now you want to be mad. You want to be angry. I know that in my struggle with infertility, I wanted to be fucking mad because I was fucking mad. It wasn't getting me anywhere, but it's what I wanted. It's what I chose. Whether subconsciously or consciously I elected to see it or not. Maybe it's because for you, it's not a pattern for you to speak up. It's not a pattern for you to take responsibility. Maybe it's because it's what's familiar. It may be a painful familiarity. It may be a painful familiarity, but it's what you know. And then if it's what you know, then you don't have to take responsibility for it. You don't have to change. You get to stay exactly who you are. You don't have to be different. You don't have to see how it's holding you back or implicating you to how your life is going right now. And all of these things, they're not right or wrong. They're justifications. The fear of holding on to strong emotions, sticking with what's familiar, it's a justification. I don't have to know you who's listening in, watching right now, quite possibly feeling very triggered I get it. Every single time somebody said to me in my struggle, it doesn't have to go this way for you, I wanted to throat punch them. Doesn't sound great, but it's what I wanted. Because I was like, how the hell would I choose this for myself? Why the hell would I choose this for myself? I don't want to be miserable. Yet every day I woke up and I felt miserable. I don't have to know you to know that if it's what's coming up and you feel triggered, it's likely that it's a pattern. It's a pattern for you. Not just you. You're not the only person in the world. So I don't want you to feel like, oh gosh, I'm the worst person in the world that's ever done this. We all do this. When we're in a pattern, sometimes we don't realize it because we have distinguished it, because it's what's familiar for us. Everything we do in life is a reflection of a pattern that we get something good or maybe not so good out of. Again, it's not right or wrong. It just is. And that is until we decide to make it different, until we decide to distinguish it, until we decide to see our culpability and our responsibility for the way things are going right now, or the way they're not. So for instance, you make a mistake. When you make a mistake and you make a mistake, a pattern that is undeserving of forgiveness, then you not only make it that way for you, but you make it that way for everybody else. You may not realize it. Think of all the times that someone came to you and said, I'm sorry. And you're like, I'm not willing to forgive you yet. It's your fault, but I'm going to be mad about it for as long as I can be mad about it. But do you take responsibility for that? I have elected to be mad about this for as long as I can be mad about this. Taking responsibility for that. I'm not willing to grant you forgiveness, but I am willing to grant myself the anger. I am willing to grant myself that I get to be mad. I am willing to grant myself that I get to stay exactly where I am with it. Mad at your ass. When you make forgiveness an opportunity to recognize where you can take responsibility in your life, where you can take responsibility for growth, same. You not only make it that way for you, but you make it that way for everybody else. You set that standard in your life. You set that standard in your business. You set that standard in your relationships. If I can take responsibility for this, then what I'm willing to accept is people in my life, my clients, my relationships that will do the same. I'm available for that shit. I'm available for responsibility. When you make the art of forgiveness a pattern that says, am I willing to get complete? Again, you set a standard that you're willing to take responsibility for your part in things, and that it's up to the people that you engage with in your life to do it too. Here's what I'm willing to accept. Here's what I'm not willing to accept. Forgiveness is not just a pattern for the really jarring or painful situations in our lives. It's a reflection of how you are running your life. It's a reflection of how you are or are not showing up in your life. It's not right or wrong, it just is. It's likely that it's a pattern for how you operate with change and growth. Will I take responsibility for it? Will I be mad about it? Will I stew in it? Will I harbor these feelings about it? Or will I distinguish that this is a pattern of what I do? It's not just about forgiveness. It's about all things. It's not just about my personal relationship. It's about my business. It's about what's going on up here, so that it spreads out everywhere, that I show up, because it's who I'm being about it. It's a pattern for you in how you operate in relationships. It's a pattern for you in how you treat yourself or don't. It's a pattern for you in how you show up in your business. You justify what makes things uncomfortable. You justify it as a thing. It's uncomfortable. I can't handle it. You justify not putting yourself first because it's how it has always been. You justify your disappointment, resentment, harsh feelings, feeling stuck, repeating a pattern of learned behavior because that is just the way things are. You do all these things and request forgiveness as a pattern when you don't embrace it. You don't allow yourself to receive it. And if you do that for you, again, you do that for everything else. To distinguish a pattern, we must first acknowledge that there is one. And to do that, we can look at what is currently tripping you up in your life. Are you constantly facing comparisonitis? Have you forgiven yourself for comparisonitis? Have you taken responsibility for that comparisonitis? Have you taken responsibility for the fact that you're comparing yourself to other people that aren't you? You're you. You're not embracing you. Have you taken responsibility for that? Do you allow people to mistreat you? Have you forgiven them for that mistreatment? Have you taken responsibility for the fact that you allow it? Have you forgiven yourself for that? Are you putting others' needs before your own? Do you struggle with the capacity at which you will be wildly successful? Shrink yourself. Do you avoid the uncomfortable conversations? Have you avoided raising your prices? Have you avoided talking freely about who you are and what you do and putting it out there so people know and can relate to you and your brilliance and your genius? Have you taken responsibility for the fact that you haven't? Have you forgiven yourself for that? To disrupt a pattern, we must interrupt it. To disrupt a pattern, we must interrupt it. Sometimes it's simple as saying, bitch, I ain't doing that no more. I'm not available for that anymore. Sometimes it's not that simple. Sometimes we must take responsibility for our part in it, for subduing the emotion of a painful memory that we have allowed to repeat and blamed others for disregarding what we want, what we need, what we dream, and have shrunken ourselves for choosing to be stuck and believing that that's the only thing that's available for me. Forgiveness is for you, it's not for them. Write that down, put it on a post-it, tattoo it on your arm. No, just kidding. I mean, you can if you want. But forgiveness is for you. It's not for them. It's what allows you to make change. It's what allows you to grow. It's what allows you to be wild and make big balls decisions. You see who you are in one area of your life is who you are in most areas of your life. If forgiveness is a hard thing for you, it's likely it's a representation of your unwillingness for you to get complete with what makes you feel uncomfortable. If it's a hard thing for you to do, it's because it's an unwillingness for you to see the opportunity for responsibility with what makes you feel uncomfortable. And if you can't be with what makes you feel uncomfortable, then how do you think you're showing up in your business? Are you willing to see yourself as capable of making a mistake, failing and rebounding, and then granting yourself forgiveness for it because you've taken responsibility for the fact that you took a fucking risk? If forgiveness is a hard thing for you, it's likely a battle within yourself that you're refusing to see that you are worthy of creativity. You are worthy of continual expansion. You are worthy of creating spaciousness for yourself in all capacities of your life. And if you can't see yourself as worthy of growth and change, then how do you think that's going to translate into growth and change in your business? Do you think that's going to attract clients that are going to want to grow and expand and change and transform with you? Do you think it's going to make you think that you're constantly available to continue to grow and expand and change to your highest level, of meeting yourself at where you are in your dreams, of having that feeling of I take responsibility for the wild amount of success that I want to have in my life and meeting me at that level? I don't need anyone else to understand it. I just need me to take responsibility for it and forgive myself for all the ways in which I've diminished myself. I haven't shown up that way. If forgiveness is a hard thing for you, it's likely that there's something you're holding on to internally because it's a pattern for you and you haven't distinguished yet what you are getting out of it. If you're noticing a stagnancy in your personal and professional life, there are a few questions I want you guys to consider. There's a few questions I want you guys to take on so you can begin distinguishing today, right now, where you are withholding forgiveness. One, what is there left to forgive? It's not that you don't know what there's left to forgive. It's not that you're not aware, that I don't know, I'm confused. It's bullshit. You know. You just haven't sat down and taken the time to be with it. Where am I stopped in my business? Where am I stopped in my relationships? Where am I stopped with myself? Where am I holding myself back? Where am I making myself small? How can you take responsibility for it? Number two, how can I take responsibility for this? Number three, am I willing to get complete with this? Sometimes we're not. Sometimes we want to be mad. I wanted to be fucking mad about infertility. Sometimes we want to hold on to it. Sometimes we want to blame mom and dad for that story. I'm not willing to get complete. Sometimes we're just not. Number four, what pattern do you notice with this experience? What pattern do you notice with what you're holding on to and not willing to or are willing to get complete around? Number five, how is holding on to this impacting your personal and professional life? What are you getting out of it? What are you getting out of it? Sometimes my clients say, nothing good. Okay, well, what's the nothing good? Distinguish it, get implicitly clear with it. Because forgiveness comes from taking responsibility. We can't take responsibility unless we know what we're clear we're taking responsibility for. And the last thing is what gifts, yes, gifts, beautiful, lovely, delicious, glorious gifts, or lessons are you taking with you from this experience? The lesson I got from my struggle with infertility is that I am not this thing, but I was devaluing myself to it. And that was a pattern for me in my life. If things didn't go away, if I go my way, if I couldn't fix it, if I couldn't correct it, if I couldn't fucking win at it and control it and make it my own, then I devalued myself as the loss. Instead of seeing that I can take responsibility for the fact that I went for it in the fucking first place. Forgiveness is an opportunity to stop looking at the why something has happened, the why someone said something to you that way, the why they influenced you that way, the why you went through that experience, and look at the what. The what being, who are you going to be about it? 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 The what is, what do you want to embody in the presence of this forgiveness? What do you want to embody in the presence of it to give you access to trusting your damn self, getting support where you need it, being vulnerable, having strength in the service of your personal growth and success, in service of who you want to be in giving and receiving abundance, personally and professionally. Sometimes in looking for the reason why something has happened, we prevent ourselves in seeing the facts. The fact is that it happened. Can't go back. Progress lives in the future. Got to keep moving forward. The fact is that you choose to engage it. You choose to see it that way. And this is hard to swallow. Believe me, I understand it's hard to swallow. Every time someone said you're victimizing yourself because you don't have a baby, look at all the wonderful, glorious gifts in your life. I said I wanted to throat punch them, and I meant it when I said it. But that's because I was choose to see that I was devaluing myself that way. I defined myself as infertility. I wasn't seeing all the amazing special gifts I had in my life and all the choices that I had to make things different. The fact is that if you can choose it, you can choose again. You can choose differently. And when we choose to become frozen in the repetition of our patterns and try to understand the why, it keeps us from moving forward. We create our own misery by replaying situations and conversations and circumstances or patterns on repeat. It's exhausting. Forgiveness is a beautiful thing that you can take on for yourself in your business and in your personal life because it gives you spaciousness. It gives you the opportunity to see yourself clearly, to see how you're making decisions clearly. Forgiveness is for you. It's an opportunity to move forward. It's an opportunity to choose who you're gonna be. It's an opportunity to see that forgiveness is a representation of your ability to thrive in difficult situations, to thrive in difficult circumstances or confrontations or business agreements, and choose to get complete. You get to choose to get complete, so you can choose to create spaciousness, so you can choose to celebrate your transformation at every turn in your life. Forgiveness is for you. And the minute that we start seeing it as our responsibility to get into alignment with who we're going to be about it, not just here, but in our heart and in our energy, is the minute we take responsibility for every single place that we show up in our life, not just personally, but in our businesses. And that is where you find your freedom. So I hope you guys love this training. I know that Lauren is going to pop on back here, and we are going to do some wild Q&A.
Girl, oh my God. I can't tell you, there's such an element to listen. Like, I was listening the whole time and taking notes, and there's such an element to your delivery that is so spiritual. It's almost like when I'm watching you speak, I'm like, preach it, girl, preach it. Like it flows through you, and it's so beautiful. Like, I was sitting here and talking with my husband just as you were speaking, and like I could visualize what you're saying on stage in front of thousands of people. Like, it is so beautiful. So before we dive into any of these Q&As, I just want to say it was such an honor to hear that. And it's such a message that so many women need to hear in the online space. So let's talk about this forgiveness stuff, because I think as you're sharing, there are two pieces of this that are really powerful. There's the element of forgiving others, and then the element of forgiving yourself.
Yep.
And one question that came up for a lot of women, we do a lot of money work, right? We do a lot of what's the old story around money. And I think a big question women have is, how do I forgive my parents for the financial struggle that they have ingrained in my subconscious mind, that it has to be hard, that I'm not good enough to make money, that being rich is icky, or whatever the old story is. So I'm wondering, for you, that parent element of forgiveness, what tips and tricks do you have for the women out there trying to overcome that?
Well, I love it because it goes back to what I said. And it's, what are you getting out of that story, right? Are you getting the opportunity to play small? Are you getting the opportunity to follow their rubric and their structure and their path, and keep perpetuating the story of, oh, I can't make any more money because I'm not willing to expand outside of that. I'm not willing to challenge myself to grow. I'm not willing to grant myself the opportunity to declare that I get to make it different. And forgiveness, this is a huge part of the responsibility aspect. Like, you can follow this pattern. You can lead on this path that you feel like has been given to you, but keep in mind, our parents are just doing the best that they can and raising us. And there's an element of blame that often comes with forgiveness and resentment. And as I was saying, harboring those feelings and holding back. But where are you taking the responsibility to grow, change, and be different, and to rewrite the story?
I think so many women get such identity out of their stories, right? Like, you even talked about this, defining yourself in your victimization. It's about like, well, this is who I am. Like, I had this struggle, or I had this problem growing up. And there's such an element of attachment. And you said the why is not important, right? Like, why you have money blocks is not important. Why things happen is not important. What are you going to do about it moving forward, right? And so if someone recognizes that they have this element that needs to be forgiven, what are some action steps that people can take to move forward into that space?
So I feel bad. I feel like I'm like, repeating myself, but I do believe that when we look at a pattern, first you have to distinguish the pattern, right? This is, I realize I see this in myself. So the first question is, are you willing to get complete with this?
Well, I guess what I meant was, because I have those questions, right? They're so strong, but like, should somebody write a letter to their parents? Should somebody keep it to themselves? Should they talk about it with their family? Should they journal around it? I mean, there's so many different avenues of action, right?
Right. I think so. For me, in dealing with this, because I had my own blocks, right? I feel like it's whatever works best for you. I'm not a big write a letter to my parents type of person. I'm more of a write a letter to myself type of person, and seeing, okay, here's who I am right now, and here's who I want to be, and identifying the differences. Okay, so what does this next level version of you, who is not going to live in that money story anymore, who's not going to let this circumstance or situation that happened to you in the past hold you back anymore, who's not going to identify themselves as being this person who lives in this victim-y place anymore? Number one, what are you willing to embody, right? Like, I say this all the time in like my lives and whatnot. So I apologize if I'm being repetitive, but
No, you have to be. It's
yeah,
important.
it's who do you want to, like, what do you want to look like?
Yeah.
How does this person look? How do they talk? How much money do they make? How do they show up in their lives? Who's in their life and who's not in their life anymore? It's,
Yeah.
I write a letter to myself and ask myself to get really, really intentional with how I want to take responsibility for this next level version of myself. But of course, if you feel like it's a matter of forgiving the relationship that you have with your parents, then I would ask you to do the same thing. If this is what currently exists for you, then what does that actual relationship look like? So I have a client that said to me once, she was like, you know, it's my birthday and my parents never call me and say happy birthday. And so I said, okay, what do you want this relationship to look like? Well, I want them to call me. And I'm like, okay, well, how can you take accountability and responsibility for the relationship? And she's like, well, I guess I could send them a text and remind them that the best thing that ever happened to them in their whole entire life was born on this day. And I said, yeah, you totally could. This is how you take accountability and responsibility for the relationship and who you want to be in that relationship, right? And so that's what she started to do, right? In all aspects of her life, showing up in that relationship with her clients and saying, here's the level of the expectation that you're going to be getting out of this relationship with me. This is how I want things to go, setting the standard and saying, here's what I'm available for. Here's what I'm not available for, so I can get into alignment with this next level, high vibe version of myself.
Yeah, I love that because there's so much of this, the facade of forgiveness, right? There's this element of I'm going to forgive someone and then they're going to change and they're going to do things differently and I'm going to get what I want. But it's beautifully put, Shannon. It's about what can you do to take ownership of how things go moving forward. And so whether it's the relationship with your parents or the relationship with yourself, you have to be able to say, well, what can I change? What can I do differently in how I show up to create the reality I want? So I fucking love that. That's so beautiful. Let's talk about the forgiveness of ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's have this conversation because you brought it up and I'm like, yes, yes. Forgiving yourself for comparisonitis or forgiving yourself for not showing up or forgiving yourself for, you know, how many people want to grow businesses? We talked about this yesterday and they don't actually show up as a business owner. They show up like they're having a hobby, right? So forgiving yourself, taking ownership, immediately we can feel that guilt. I did this wrong. I did this wrong. So what happens when that guilt comes up?
So what happens in terms of forgiveness, when the guilt comes up, it's a larger, there's something larger at play, right? Because it's not, you know, you want to have the forgiveness, you know, you want to show up in your business, but what is it that you're looking to forgive? What is actually getting in the way of that? Identifying and distinguishing the pattern that you've adapted to in your life, which is, if I don't show up as X, then it's wrong. Which is why I always say with forgiveness, there is no right or wrong, right? It just is. It's the embodiment of what you want to have happen for yourself. So it becomes it's almost like a stalemate, right? We become paralyzed in our patterns because we feel like if we don't show up in a certain way, then no one's going to like it. The pattern is not the actual identification of what you need to forgive. It's what you need to forgive. It's what are you forgiving yourself for? Because you having a business is one thing, but how you show up in it is all about you. And you making it about other people shows that there's something larger at play there. There's something larger at play for the individual, and confidence and self-esteem. And I always say that confidence and self-esteem is not like something you go to the grocery store and you like pick off the shelf like a pack of eggs. It's not something that you have, it's something that you are. And that's the same thing for your business. You know, I think you talked about a little bit yesterday, you know, staying in line with like your why, so you can stay in line with like your next level goals. Yeah. And I know a lot of people call it like their why, their purpose, all these things, but it's about who you are in your business that is actually the driver of how you're going to show up. And what sounds like in that instance of what the forgiveness needs to be is you diminishing yourself. You not allowing yourself to have self-confidence in who you are as already being enough. And I hear this so often as like, oh, I need the credentialing, right? I need to have a certain amount of clients, right? And it's like, oh, but this is all something that you made up. This is something that you made up. Is actually a deterrent that keeps you small from coming out into the world and sharing your gifts, because your experience, your actual very being is what gives you the credentialing to show up and speak on your truth.
Yeah. I think I think there's a real truth to this element of the pattern, because I can even feel, and I'll share. Can I share with you?
Yes.
Little like dialogue, a little story. I get this a lot from people where they work through something. I put that in air quotes. They work through it, and then a couple months later, the story comes up again, and they go, "What the fuck? I thought I worked through this," and then they feel the guilt and the shame of like, "Oh my god! Like I thought I dealt with my money shit, and why the fuck is it coming up?" And I've learned just in my own life that the pattern is a pattern, right? And you're not going to wake up and suddenly never have a problem in that area of your life ever again, because it's part of your life lesson, right? So for me, what I wanted to share with you, my pattern and my old story, is that I'm not enough for women, right? Which is funny because I'm like growing a fucking business with a drive that as business
millionaire, and
but in my story, my narrative, I am always afraid of like being judged, or I'm afraid of not fitting in, or I'm afraid of, being rejected. And so that story in the beginning of my business was, hey, you got a nasty comment on Instagram, or, that person didn't buy your program. I'm like, oh, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And then like I healed that. And then at this layer, when an employee decides to walk away, I go, oh, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And like, so the pattern, I think, it's not that it never goes away, right? It's never that it just disappears. It's just like you're learning your life lesson in different ways, right? Does that make sense? Like,
oh my gosh, yes.
In these different ways.
I call this the same shit, different outfit.
Same
shit, different outfit. So when I'm coaching with my clients and they expand, they grow, they forgive and take responsibility for something at level A, but they expand and they grow, and now they're at level G. And this same shit, different outfit shows up because this is your pattern. When we distinguish a pattern, as I said, most everybody says these days, as a coach, at least who you are in one area is typically who you are in most areas. So as you continue to grow and expand, those stories don't go away. You healed them at level A and who you are at level A. But this pattern is going to come with you to level G, because now it's brand new at this level. And it's brand new at this level because you're brand new at this level. And so it's going to show up again and be like this context of the not enoughness, the not worthy of, whatever is coming your way. Or if someone leaves, it's on me. I justify that it's something about me. And when it comes to these contexts or these patterns that we perpetuate them. The best thing that we can do is to take ownership and responsibility for the fact that I'm doing this shit to myself. Why am I doing this shit to myself? And realize that it's going to rear its head, same shit, different outfit someday. And when it does, what happens, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, is when we distinguish it, our retractory or our rebound period gets smaller and smaller.
Yes.
But it does not prevent it from showing up later on at a different level.
Yeah. One of my early on coaches said it's, you're growing when you stay stuck in your story for a shorter amount of time. It doesn't mean that story disappears. It's just like, oh, this again? Cool. I'll work through it. Right. And so rejection and experiencing it in the beginning of my business, I would lose it for like a month. Right. I would be in so much pain around rejection. Now it's like 24 hours or 12 hours. And I'm like, all right, I'm good. Like you grow. Yeah. So you grow through that process. So acknowledging these steps were so beautiful, right? What is there left to forgive? Am I willing to get complete, right? These pattern. I loved that process. And I'm wondering for you, if we can have this conversation around taking ownership, because especially as somebody who, you've struggled with infertility, you talk about this a lot. You have an amazing book coming out that I'm so excited for you to share and talk about. We'll dive into that. But you asked yourself to take ownership and responsibility of something that for so many women, they say, this is not my fault. I'm not responsible for this. Poor me, poor me, poor me.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. Taking ownership in your victimhood.
Yeah. So it's a very important, look, I'm a mindset coach. So one of the things that I believe is that this affects everything.
Yes.
And whether you're, functioning as a business coach or you're functioning as a mindset coach, this still affects everything. It affects how you show up. It affects how you don't show up. But taking responsibility and ownership for what we have going on in our life requires something that is hard for a lot of people. Hard. And it's vulnerability, because we tend to see vulnerability as something that is a weakness. Mm-hmm. We tend to identify it as, I have hurt feelings and I'm emotional. And for women, that tends to be hard, right? Because, you know, society has deemed that that's our place in the world, to be emotional and sensitive. And, oh, that's just what you do. But really, the art of being vulnerable is the art of having a duality. It's the ability to be emotional and completely supported. And when we take ownership of who we are or are not being in our lives, it requires us to be extremely vulnerable. And sometimes that involves people saying the uncomfortable thing, like, you're doing this to yourself, and you go, you're right. Like, that stings, but you're right. I am doing it to myself. And that allows me to not only be vulnerable with you and admitting it, but being vulnerable with me and allowing myself to forgive myself that I basically stood on my own tail and allowed myself to walk in place for as long as I was. Allowed myself to perpetuate that story for as long as I was. Allowed me, look, I blamed, there were so many crazy things I did during my struggle, like, thanks a lot for the poor genes, mom. You know, thanks a lot for the endometriosis, mom. And it took a lot of ownership to realize nobody could have predicted that. Nobody could have prevented that. And the only person that was keeping me standing still was my lack of ability to be strong in my vulnerability.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard this from so many people, right? Like, even in the position of being a business coach, where it's like, it's not my fault I don't have the money to invest in X, Y, and Z, or like, this bad thing happened to me and I have to pay this bill and now I can't do this. And it's like, that victimhood energy is in your brain and it's affecting everything else. So taking ownership of standing on your tail, I love that you described it that way. It's really powerful. It's a beautiful analogy. So let's talk about this. You have a book coming out. I'm sure there were some stories and fears that came up as you decided to step into the space of vulnerability at this new layer. So share this with us. Infertility Sucks, You Don't is the title of this beautiful book that comes out on December 24th, Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So tell us, what can someone expect and anticipate from that beautiful book that you're putting out into the world?
Yeah. So first of all, you're hitting it right on the head. Very scared. I keep telling people I'm like, you know, peeing and like shitting my pants all at the same time. Because this is new uncharted territory for me. You know, being a writer is a brand new thing. It's my first book ever. But you know, within the first few lines of the book, one of the things that I say, and it's very challenging, right? Like, what you're going to find within this book are a lot of the uncomfortable things that people have said to me over the course of my journey with infertility. And I don't believe that when you are diagnosed with symptoms related to infertility, and someone like me who's had surgery and taken all the drugs and the hormones and went through suicidal thoughts and, you know, just really, really was very self-destructive. It's not easy. It's not easy to hear those things and to really take ownership of how you're perpetuating them and allowing yourself to be in that place. So there's going to be a lot of challenging things within the book. And so that being why it's very hard for me, not hard again, but challenging for me to publish it, because I'm going to say the unsavory things. And one of the, you know, unsavory things that I heard on my struggle with infertility was everybody telling me, just keep going, just keep going. Meanwhile, my hair fell out. I was 85 pounds. I had developed cystic acne and I wanted to kill myself. And nobody had explained to me that this was going to be what was going to potentially happen with taking all these hormones. And so I share the unpopular opinion in this book that says, I don't care if you get pregnant. This book is not about you getting pregnant. I'm quite indifferent about you getting pregnant at all. What I care about is you surviving this, you thriving through this, and realizing that you are not this thing. This thing sucks. It's a disease. It's not you. It does not culminate or sum up the embodiment of your existence, not even a tenth of it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say the uncomfortable thing, which is there's going to be a lot of shit that happens during this that will probably really fuck your life up, because it fucked my life up.
Yeah.
But it's okay to stop. It's okay to give up. It's okay to say, I'm done now because I choose it.
Yeah. You know, there's so many themes in what you're sharing with me, and obviously I haven't read the book yet, but I'm so excited to go and grab that on Amazon. Infertility sucks, you don't. And I've never been in a position where I tried to get pregnant, but what I can feel is the theme here that every business owner should take away is that you overcame your courage to talk about something that is considered taboo to talk about or uncomfortable to talk about. And I think in the online space, all of us who are trying to step out and be leaders, there's this part of us that says, I should really talk about this. And then there's this other party that goes, holy fuck, that's scary. What are people going to say if I talk about that thing? Am I going to be judged? Oh my God. And so there's that element of this. And then there's also the narrative of understanding that your problem doesn't define you. Your problem is not you. It's the separate thing. So I think it's just so beautiful, and it's so needed to get out into the world. And so for any entrepreneur that is wanting to find their voice and to speak on something that is scary or uncomfortable for them, what would your advice be on that?
So one of my clients said something to me. I love my clients. I just love people in general. But when my client said something to me, so my advice would be, once she said to me, you have challenged me with the greatest challenge of my life, and it's to continue to make the big hairy balls decisions. And that's what I would say to you. I would say, when you have that little intuitive hit or that intuitive nudge, and I think you said it so beautifully, where you feel challenged, almost like it's a responsibility, which ties back into forgiveness, right? It's a responsibility that's been laid on your shoulders where you feel so challenged to speak out on something, but in a way that empowers you, in a way that you feel other people can really gravitate towards and grab something for themselves. Make the big hairy balls decision.
Make the big hairy balls decision. Yes. I think that the two most powerful quotes you shared throughout this training, I took a lot of notes. Forgiveness is for you, not for them, and make the big hairy ball decision. Amazing. Shannon, for anybody that wants to know more about you, before we sign off, tell our girls where they can come find you, where they can come jam out with you and get to know you and connect.
Oh my goodness. So first of all, thank you guys for tuning in today. My heart is already with you. I just love you. Thank you so much. You can find me on Instagram. I love the gram. I love posting stories on the gram at Shannon Wooten. And my website where you can find more about me, learn about coaching with me, it is www.lifewithshannon.com or Shannon Wooten on Facebook. I'm constantly showing places.
Amazing. Shannon, thank you so much for being here. We're going to sign off today on our live stream. Shannon and I are going to jam out and have a little private conversation after this. But thank you guys so much for being here. Tune in tomorrow. We have Stephanie Bellinger coming on to talk about the energy shifts to take you to the next level. We're covering all the things. It's amazing. I love this.
Goosebumps.
Fucking rocking it. Goosebumps everywhere. Guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Shannon, thanks so much. We'll talk to y'all soon.